Gypsy Tales, Story number 12. The Prince and the Kindly Rabbit. Long, long ago there lived a king who had 3 sons. Even though his realm was not large, the king was very wealthy. In his garden there grew an apple tree that bore fruit made of solid gold. For many years no one but the king knew of the existence of the magic tree, and thus he lived without fear, for he knew that his fortune was secure. Late one summer day, the king noticed that several of the golden apples were missing. That afternoon, just before sunset, he went into the garden and counted the golden fruits that were hanging from the branches. The next day, he counted them again, and to his dismay, he discovered that still another apple was missing. For an entire week, he checked the tree and each day found that one more apple had disappeared. Very upset by this turn of events, the king called his 3 sons into his chamber and told them what had happened. "Father," said the oldest, "I'm going to watch the golden apple tree at night. If a thief appears, I will surely capture him." The son went to stand guard. After a few hours of waiting, he felt so sleepy that he could not stay awake. As soon as he had closed his eyes, a golden bird appeared and plucked one of the apples from a branch and flew away. The next morning, the king counted the apples and realized that another one had been stolen. "Let me try tonight, father," said the second son. The king agreed, but this lad was no more fortunate than his older brother. Having seated himself beneath the tree, he too fell fast asleep. And once again the golden bird appeared and flew off with another apple. "What good are you?" questioned the old king when he discovered the theft. "Why, is it so difficult to stay awake and catch the thief who is robbing us of our income?" "Let me try, father," said the youngest. "How can you succeed where your older brothers have failed?" snapped the king. "Never mind, father," replied the lad. "Older and wiser though my brothers may be, they do not know how to catch a thief." "All right then," said the king. "I've nothing to lose by letting you try." That evening the youngest son climbed up the tree. He found a twig with thorns and leaned his chin against it. "Whenever I feel sleepy," said he to himself, "the thorn will prick me and I shall wake up." It was very near daybreak when he saw the golden bird approach and perch itself on a twig just above him. As the bird was trying to pluck one of the apples from a branch, the lad lunged at it. The bird, however, wriggled loose and escaped, leaving the lad holding 3 of his beautiful gold feathers. Early the next morning, the king appeared in the garden. "Well, what happened?" he asked. "I was unable to hold on to the culprit," replied the prince, "but I did prevent his stealing any more of the precious fruit." He showed his father the beautiful gold feathers. The king uttered a cry and threw his hands over his eyes. But it was too late. The light given off by the feathers was so dazzling that it had blinded the king. Sadly, the young prince led his father back to the throne room. There the king asked that the other 2 brothers be brought into the chamber. The king then said to his oldest son, "The only way I can regain my sight is if you capture the bird. I bid you go forth into the world, find the bird, and bring it back to me." The same day the oldest prince made preparations to leave. He asked that a magnificent Arabian horse be saddled for him. Then he put 2 satchels of gold ducats into his pockets and rode away. After several days he came to a lonely country inn that he had never seen before. After the prince had eaten a big meal of roasted suckling pig and pheasant, an elegantly dressed man came over to his table. "We are playing a game of cards, sir," he said. "Would you like to join us?" "I shall gladly play cards with you," he replied. Thus the prince sat down to play. However, he very quickly lost all of his money. He sold his horse and his clothes, but the money gained from this transaction was soon lost as well. Not satisfied with this turn of events, he borrowed some money, but he lost this too. "Well, sir," said the elegantly clad man, "since you cannot pay your debt, we'll have to throw you into jail." Though the prince pleaded with his creditors, begging them to let him go home to get some more money, they would not listen. He was immediately placed in a deep dungeon. After 6 months had gone by and the prince had not returned, the king asked his second oldest son to go in the search of the golden bird. The son put several satchels of gold ducats in his pocket. He had his best horse saddled and rode off. After a few days he came to the same country inn that his brother had stopped at 6 months before. As he was finishing a big meal, the same stranger approached and asked him to play cards. He fared no better than his brother had. Within an hour he had lost his money, his horse, and his fine clothes. That same night he too was thrown into the dungeon. A year had gone by, and neither prince had returned. "It is my turn to go," said the youngest son to his father one day. "I don't know if I should permit it," replied the monarch. "How can you succeed where your older and wiser brothers have failed?" But the youngest son refused to be talked out of his mission. "I shall bring the bird back to you, father." "Luck be with you, then," replied the king. Unlike his brothers, he set out on an old mare and carried just a few coins in his pocket. After having traveled for several days, he came to a small forest. There he saw a lame rabbit limping through the woods. Because he felt sorry for the helpless animal, he considered killing it so that it might be spared any further pain. But just at this moment, the rabbit turned to the prince and began to talk to him. "Do not kill me, good prince. There is much I have to tell you. I know that you're going in the quest of the golden bird who has stolen so many of your precious gold apples. I know where you can find that bird. If you'll leave your horse to graze here and mount upon my back, I'll take you there." The prince did as he was told. In less time than it would take to blink an eye, the prince was standing before a magnificent castle set high against the side of a mountain. Each turret of the castle was studded with diamonds and other precious stones that glistened in the sun. Surrounding the castle were beautiful shrubs and trees that were blooming in bright oranges and blues and yellows. "Listen carefully now," said the rabbit. "When you pass through the great hall of the palace, you'll see many different birds sitting in many different cages of diamonds, gold, silver, and wood. In the first one there will be a diamond bird, in the second a golden bird, in the third a silver bird, and in the fourth a miserable common bird. Beware of taking any of the birds in the beautiful cages, for they'll bring only misery to you. Take the common bird in the wooden cage." Cautiously, the prince entered the mysterious deserted palace. As he wandered through the great hall, he saw the birds in their different cages. Everything was exactly as the rabbit had said. But the prince wondered, surely the good rabbit might have made a mistake. "I came here in the search of the golden bird. Why take the bird in the ordinary cage? Really, it makes no sense." He walked over to the bird in the gold cage, and just as he was about to take it, all of the birds began to scream. Within seconds, the palace was alive with soldiers. The guards grabbed him and dragged him before the king, who was dressed in a glorious velvet cape. "Why have you come here?" the monarch asked in an angry and gruff voice. "Sire, I came for the bird who has robbed my father of the gold apples." "I know you're telling the truth," replied the king, "and if you perform a service for me, I shall not throw you into prison. There is a certain king who has a silver horse. Bring me the horse, and I shall give you the golden bird." The prince left the palace, and outside of the gates he found the rabbit. "I warned you, but you did not listen to me," said the rabbit. "But I'll help you once more. Jump on my back, and I'll take you to the silver horse." Within seconds they were at the stable. "Now listen carefully," said the rabbit. "You'll see beautiful silver and gold horses. Under no circumstances are you to touch them. Instead, walk to the end of the stall, and there you'll see a miserable old horse. That is the animal you must take." The prince entered the stall, and immediately he was confused. "Didn't the king ask for a silver horse?" he mused. "Why should I bring him this shabby old mare? The rabbit must have made a mistake." He walked over to the silver horse and tried to mount it. Instantly the stable was filled with soldiers, and the prince was arrested. He was brought before the king, who asked, "What are you doing here?" "Sire, I came to steal your silver horse because your neighboring king has promised to give me the golden bird if I deliver the horse to him." "I shall give you the horse myself," said the king, "if you can bring me the princess with the golden locks." The prince left him and found the rabbit outside, who now was very angry with him. "Why won't you listen to me? Why won't you do as I tell you?" "From now on, I promise to do exactly as you say, no matter how strange it may seem to me," said the prince. "But please help me once more." "All right," said the rabbit. "I'll take you to the princess, but this is your last chance. You must do exactly as I say." Before the prince could even thank the rabbit for being so helpful to him once more, he found himself inside of a palace with golden walls. "The princess's room is over there," said the rabbit, pointing to a door that was carved out of a diamond. "Eat with the princess and entertain her. Late at night I shall come back for both of you, but until I arrive you must not let her persuade you to leave the room. No matter what happens, no matter what she promises to you. Do you understand?" "I shall do exactly as you say," said the prince. As he entered the room, the princess rose to greet him. Her hair glowed as if it were pure gold. Her eyes were as blue and sparkling as the deepest sapphires, and her lips were as red as a ruby-red rose. She was, indeed, the most beautiful girl the prince had ever seen, and thus he immediately fell in love with her. There was only one thing that did not seem right. The princess never looked directly into the young man's eyes. Whenever he spoke to her, her eyes drifted away. She seemed to be gazing at something in the distance which the prince could not see. After a few minutes with her, the prince realized that the princess was under some mysterious spell. About half an hour after the prince had entered her room, the princess suggested that they take a stroll through the rest of the palace. As they approached the door, the prince remembered the rabbit's warning, and also recalled how badly things had turned out when he had disobeyed the creature's instructions. "Let's eat something first," said the prince, hoping to gain some time. They sat down and the prince ate soup, pheasant and grouse, ham and suckling pig, the finest food and dessert. In the meantime, the rabbit had gone back to the stall. He had hobbled to where the miserable old horse was eating hay. He jumped onto his back, and instantly the animal was turned into a magnificent silver steed. Off they rode at a blinding speed before any of the other horses had a chance to neigh and before any of the guards had discovered the theft. Next, the rabbit entered the palace of the birds. He took the ordinary-looking bird that was in the wooden cage and placed it on the back of the silver horse. Before the other birds could screech and before the guards could discover the theft, they were out of the palace and on their way to the castle of the princess with the golden locks. As soon as the bird was out of the castle, it transformed itself into the golden bird who had stolen the fruit. Quickly, the rabbit hopped to the chamber of the golden-haired princess. He was not a minute too early. The prince and the princess had finished their elaborate meal, and the princess was angrily trying to persuade the prince to leave the chamber. "Grab the princess!" shouted the rabbit to the prince. "Run through the hall as fast as you can, and then jump up on the horse you'll find outside. There is no more than a minute left before this palace disappears forever." The prince did as he was told. Just as they reached the safety of the outside, lightning struck and the earth trembled. A vast cleft appeared in the land, and the castle crumbled into dust and disappeared into the vault. "Where am I?" asked the princess, as if in a dream. "You shall become the wife of this prince," replied the rabbit, "but first we have work to do and we must be off." It seemed that within seconds they were at the small forest where the prince had first seen the rabbit. Grazing in the field was the old mare he had ridden when he left his father's palace. "Take your princess and the gold bird and return to your father's castle," ordered the rabbit. "But what about you?" asked the prince. "You must come and live with us." "I cannot do that," replied the rabbit. "Then at least tell me who you are," asked the prince. "I cannot do that either," replied the rabbit. "But now ask no more questions and be off." They bade farewell to each other and rode off in different directions. The prince, the princess, and the golden bird towards the castle of the blind king, and the rabbit on his silver steed into the forest. As soon as the prince had given the bird to his father, the king regained his sight. He was very pleased when he saw the princess, and within a week a great wedding feast was held. After another year had passed and his two older brothers had still not returned, the prince decided that he would try to find them. He left his father and his lovely wife, and off he rode. After having traveled for a few days, he came to the very inn where his brothers had met their misfortune. There he learned what had happened to them, and thus continued his quest. At the prison, the prince was very surprised to hear that a year earlier a strange nobleman with a slight limp had paid an enormous ransom for his two brothers. He also learned that the two had gone to seek their fortunes, and had vowed that they would return the ransom money to the generous stranger. Satisfied to learn that his two brothers were alive, and realizing that sooner or later they would return to the palace, the young prince set off for home. As he was riding through the forest, he thought about all the wondrous things that had happened in the past 2 years. Just as he was thinking about the good rabbit, he heard the sharp clickety-clack of a horse in full gallop. Coming towards him at a tremendous speed was a magnificent silver stallion that he immediately recognized as the same horse the rabbit had ridden into the woods just about a year ago. Seated on its back this time, however, was a dashing horseman in the colorful costume of a gypsy king. Although nobody really knows for sure whether the magic rabbit was indeed a legendary gypsy ruler, there are still people who will tell you that whenever gypsies gather to elect a king, a magnificent silver stallion can be found grazing near their campfire. There are others who claim that in the last week of every autumn, that week when the harvest is being gathered and the leaves are falling, that week before the gypsy caravan arrives in a small village, a limping rabbit shows up at exactly that place where the gypsies will make their campsite. End of story number 12.